Okay, so on synthetic division, what is going on?
You take the opposite of that number. So I'm going to take positive 3.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah? Sorry, I didn't think I got big. Okay, so you're going to make this little L box, kind of a backwards L. It's not an L. It's a backwards L. And I'm going to put positive 3 in that box. So this is just how you set up synthetic division. Okay, so good question. Why positive 3? So when we do long division, like if I was doing long division, I would do x minus 3 into this. And I say, what times x gives me x squared is x, and I multiply. What do I do here when I, right, you change the sign. So instead, on synthetic division, we add here. And so because we're adding, that change of sign comes from here. So it always changes the sign in the box. So it becomes positive. Okay, next to the box, I'm going to write above here first, is going to be the coefficients, and we'll talk about what that means, of the dividend. What is a coefficient? Number in front of the x. So what's in front of this x squared? A 1. Ooh, that's my dead one. A 1, so I'm going to put a 1 first. What's my next coefficient? 6. Okay. So I put a 6 next. And what's my last coefficient? A 1. Because this is really like an x to the 0. So I put all 3 coefficients. Make sure you see that. 1, 6, 1. And then leave a little space and draw a line.
Like don't draw directly under.
Right. Leave a tiny space because we're going to put numbers under here. Okay, that's how you set up synthetic division. So opposite number, then coefficients. So here's how you do synthetic division. You always drop down the first number. If it's under the line, think of long division, like this one. When it's on top of the line, what do I do with it? Multiply to this, right? Same thing. When it's under the line, I'm going to multiply. 1 times 3 is 3, and it goes under the 6.
So would that be 18?
Here's where we're going to add. So I don't usually write a plus sign here, but so you have it on the first one. Think of long division, right? After I multiply, I subtract and I subtract. Okay, here we're adding because we've already changed the sign. So that would be 9. When it's under the line, I multiply with what's in the box. So 9 times 3 is 27. And then I add, so this would be 28. Okay, we started with, what are these 3 green numbers right here? Coefficients. We're going to end with coefficients. So all 3 of these are coefficients. The last one is your remainder.
How did you get the 27?
9 times 3. So everything under the line I multiply. 1 times 3 is 3, then I add. 9 times 3 is 27, and then I add. If it was bigger, I would keep going. 28 times 3, and I'd write it up here. Okay, if I start with an x squared, and I divide by an x to the first, which is what you always do on synthetic division, you drop an x off of this for your answer. So if I start with 1x squared, my answer is going to start with 1x to the first. Which you don't have to write the 1 there. You could just write x. Then I have plus 9. There's no x there. And then my remainder, 28 over x minus 3. And that's it.
You can do it either way, though.
Yes, like on today's worksheet and tomorrow's practice, I have you doing some synthetic just to practice. But on the test, you can do all long division if you wanted to. Okay, let's try another one. So 3x squared, minus 11x minus 4. good question. So up here, I started with x squared, right? But think of when I divide x squared by x, I subtract exponents, so I get x to the first. So if I start with x squared, my answer is 1 less than that, x to the first. In a little bit, we're going to do an x cubed one. I'm going to divide by an x to the first. My answer is 1 less than that, so I start with x squared. So look here, if I cover up x squared, it goes x to the first and then my number. So that's my answer here, x to the first and then my number, and then my remainder. It's like standard form. You always go in order. Okay, so what goes in the box? Positive 1. And then your coefficients. What's my first coefficient? 3. And then negative 11. So it's not just a positive 11. Make sure you bring that negative 11. And then negative 4. And then leave a little space and draw your line. So always drop the first number. Bring down the 3. What do I do with the 3? Good. Multiply by 1 and it goes under the negative 11. So add going down. That's negative 11 plus 3. Negative 8. Multiply again. Negative 8 times 1. Negative 8.
So does that become positive?
Well, we're adding. So negative 4 plus negative 8, negative 12. So I like to circle or box this so I remember it's not going to actually be part of my answer because it's just the remainder. It's not part of that quotient. So we started with x squared, which means my answer starts with what? 3x to the first. Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Minus 8. So if I go x to the first, this is really 8x to the 0, but of course we don't ever write that. X to the 0. And then my remainder. You can do plus negative 12 over x minus 1, or if some of you want to put that negative here, I would take either one. And you don't have to put that. What do you think about synthetic?
Does it get this, or does it stay this simple, or does it get complicated?
The only thing it gets more complicated with is if it's missing a term, which we're going to do one next. But what's nice is like yesterday, remember how we did those long ones? Like x cubed and it was super long? Well, if you're doing synthetic division, it's not that long. So it saves you lots of time. Okay, so the biggest mistakes with synthetic division come from if it's missing a term. If you don't put in a placeholder, it messes up your answer completely. So looking at your dividend here, x squared plus 25, what's missing? Right, the x. So before I even start, I always try to look at that. So I'm going to put a placeholder in of 0 in between these two. So what goes in the box? Positive 5. So I start with my coefficients 1, x squared. And then I put the 0 in, and then 25. So try that one.
You're saying if you want, you do long division?
Yes, like on the test, I did not specify. It just says divide. So,
Like long division.
yeah, so you can use long division. I'm pretty sure on the test we didn't specify because if you know how to divide, if you can do long division, you're fine.
I prefer long.
It's just synthetic doesn't work for both. The thing is when you get into like if you were doing college algebra, I think that they use it, so you use synthetic division a lot as you move up into the like algebra world. So that's why we teach it, because when it gets crazy, you don't want to use long division.
so you should get 1, 5, and 50. Then since I started with x squared, here I start with x to the first, or you can put 1x to the first if that helps you, plus 5, and then my remainder, 50 over x minus 5. Any questions on number 3? Okay, so I have 2 more for you. So let's do one that has an x cubed. So when you're doing division, whether it's long or synthetic, I would always start with, am I missing anything? Yes, you're missing x squared. And I would write it in somewhere because what I'm seeing a lot is people are putting their zeros in the wrong place. So I would have 0x squared. That way when you write it, you know it goes 1, then 0, and then negative 2. So what, yeah, that's 6. What goes in the box? Negative 3. It's always opposite of this. This is our first negative one. Negative 3 goes in the box. So our coefficients, 1, 0, negative 2, and 6. And then the same process. So if you were doing long division on this one, it just gets really lengthy. So this is a nice shortcut. Bring down the 1, and then multiply. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. This is just adding 0 plus negative 3, negative 3. And then multiply again. Negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. Good. And then add again. Negative 2 plus 9 is 7. Multiply again. Negative 21. And then negative 50. And as soon as you finish, maybe circle that or something so you know it's not going to be, it's going to be your remainder. So here, we started with x cubed, so what does my answer start with? X squared. So I have a 1x squared. And I just go down from there. Minus 3x plus 7, and then my remainder. All right, one more. Okay, last one. So the first thing you say, is anything missing? X to the third is missing. Gosh. X to the third is missing. And the x is missing. So we talked a little yesterday. If you start with an x to the third equation, you should have a total of 4 coefficients. Because you would have x cubed, x squared, x to the first, and x to the 0. So if I start with x to the fourth, I should have 5 things. What goes in the box? Yes, it is negative 2. And then our coefficients. So we have 1, 0, 2, 0, and negative 2. So when you're doing the problems you're going to work on today, always say to yourself, is anything missing? So drop the 1. And then multiply. -2. 0 plus -2 is -2. Multiply again, +4. 2 plus 4 is 6. And then multiply -12. -12 and 24. So we started with x to the 4th. What's my answer start with?
X to the third.
X to the 3rd. So x to the 3rd minus 2x squared plus, good, 6x minus
12.
and then our remainder.
Well, this worksheet, do we have to do synthetic?
I have 2 of them that yes. Okay. Real quick before I give you your worksheet though, because one of them is a weird answer. So that's a 1, 0, and then a 5. Okay, let's say you started with an x cubed equation, and these are your answers. So what would your answer start with? X squared. What is this? A 0x. So you can just skip it. I don't have to write that. So then I would just write +3, and then here's my remainder, 5 over whatever.
So the zeros we just skipped it?
Right. So there's one of them on your worksheet where you get a 0, and everyone's like, what do I do with that? So don't write an x, because that would be a 1x. Just skip it. Okay, so let me give you your worksheet, and then I'll tell you which ones you're doing which method on. You should finish it in class, which is the plan, hopefully, because there's only 6 of them.